I saw it when it came out in 1983, and you know, like I say in the book, it was, I think, the first Star Wars movie that created a thin divide between people who had maybe grown up with the first two and then found the Ewoks a little bit hard to take. I think when I first saw them, I was sort of, you've got to be kidding me. These are people in suits, and I can't get with the program. But you know, I spoke with Sid Ganis while doing the book. Sid Ganis was the head of marketing at Lucasfilm, and he says, you know, now he has grandchildren who just, without him saying anything, spontaneously love the Ewoks. So I admit that I've come around.
And Jeremy, you met some Star Wars fans from all over the world. Where do you think Star Wars, Jedi sits in the Star Wars sort of pantheon? Do you think people have warmed to Jedi over the years?
Yes, I think they have. Over the years, they've got used to it. It's the Jar Jar Binks syndrome, which is not quite, it hasn't quite got through. I like Jar Jar Binks.
Right.
Do you like Jar Jar Binks?
I had no problem with Jar Jar. That's just
I'll start a new club. Save Jar Jar Binks.
And Jonathan, when you're sort of looking into the script notes and the drafts and the treatments, what were some of the ideas that didn't hit the screen, that changed?
Well, the biggest ideas were, in the early drafts, there were going to be 2 Death Stars, and there's a great Ralph McQuarrie painting of that. And then there was also going to be the Imperial City, which eventually became Coruscant, but which was called Had Abaddon.
Right.
And the Emperor was down there, but when they got to the story conference, it just became too complicated to have 2 Death Stars and the Emperor down here, and how were they going to do all that? And it was going to tie up the stage at ILM for months and cost too much.
Right. And what was it fair to say that the Vader and Emperor sort of relationship was a bit more confrontational in early drafts? Yeah,
in the early drafts, it was more of a seamless segue between Empire and Jedi. It started, and the Emperor and Vader were angry at each other. They were clearly at each other's throats, and the Emperor forces Vader to his knees and basically says, "Remember who's your master."
Right.
And they're fighting over who's going to get Luke.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's right. And Jeremy, did you think that Boba Fett was treated well in Jedi? We have it. You know, like comedy depth, isn't it?
I was going to ask you this question. Now you're here. You've done this wonderful book. You should move away, because what you're going to hear is going to be awful. Were you responsible for Boba Fett going into the Sarlacc pit?
No comment.
Right. Was there any more of Boba Fett? Did he come up in earlier drafts? Was there more of him?
No, they don't seem to mention Boba Fett much in the story conference, but nor do they mention much, Han Solo or Leia. They really become sort of obsessed with what's Luke's destiny, because he's the key guy, and it's about him. And so a few of the other characters suffer as a result of that.
Right.
They did have some script problems.
And Jeremy, was there when the film came out, was there this cult around Boba Fett then? Had it happened sort of straight after Empire, or is that something that's grown?
I think when they re-released the films, 1996, 97, that's when Boba Fett became popular. I think they needed to have another look. When it first came out, they said, "Oh, that's interesting," but it just went by. But when they re-released the films, it was incredible, the amount of letters you get and people saying, "Thank you for my childhood, thank you for this." And there's the 501st guys who dress up in different costumes, and every weekend they're doing something. And they've made him popular as well, because the costume does look pretty awesome.
It's really awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And John, when you're doing a book like this, how much sort of control or sort of censorship does George Lucas have in this? Would he look at everything you do? And
every weekend he was standing over my shoulder. Nothing better to do.
I'm sure, yeah.
No, we have it down to a routine, because I've worked on many books with him, not just the ones that I've written. Sometimes he has ideas for books, and we do those. For these, basically, he just leaves me alone, and what I do is I give him the first draft, and he reads it, completely, very closely, takes out a word here. He really doesn't make a lot of changes. If something is just wrong, he points it out, and then when it's fresh in his mind, then we sit down, and I've sort of been storing up questions for a year or so while I'm doing the research. And for me, it's like a catharsis. I get to sit there ask him finally all these questions that I was wondering about, where I just couldn't find the answers, or I wasn't really sure.
Yeah.
And then we do this big interview, and then I revise the manuscript. But he doesn't really. I send him the revised parts, but I think he looks at those a lot less closely. And that's it. He doesn't really look at it again until it's done.
All right. And Jeremy, one of the interesting through lines in the book is the story of the director Richard Marquand, who kind of he's kind of unsung hero in the Star Wars story, I think. What are your kind of memories of him, and how do you kind of compare to Irving Kershner?
Well, I'd met Richard Marquand before Star Wars. I did something, I think it was a commercial or a documentary film, I still can't remember. He was a very nice man and a good director. Irving Kershner would actually say, I'll stand up to do this, he'd say, it's Jeremy. Jeremy. I said, yes, it is. Jeremy. Okay. Now, in this little bit, Jeremy, I want you to walk, turn, and look. Look over there. I said, oh, okay, right, so. And I'd stepped 2 more steps than I should have done. But he said, that's it. So he would do it, but he loved acting.
Right.
He loved playing the parts, and it was very fun. He said, did we just do, yes, that's a bit, it's perfect. Thank you, Evan, very much. But he was very funny, but he loved being an actor as well, so he'd walk through every single piece you had to do.
Right. And John, what did you sort of discover about Marquand and his kind of his role?
Well, unfortunately, he passed away before I could meet him. So I was worried that I wouldn't have his voice in the book, because for obvious reasons. But when I was doing the research, the initial research in the Skywalker Ranch archives, there's just boxes, just cardboard boxes marked Return of the Jedi. The librarians sort of let me in, and I just rummaged. And then in one of the boxes, shoved in the side, and it hadn't been marked on any list of stuff that might be in the boxes, was a more than 100-page long interview with Richard that Beecher had done. The guy who wrote the original small making of Jedi, and it was very long and very in-depth and very honest. So
that's just gold, isn't it?
I just couldn't believe it.
And one of the other thing, the element of the story that the book brings out is the kind of the pressure that ILM were under. And can you explain what Black Friday is?
Black Friday, what happened was during editorial in Post, George was preoccupied, he had personal problems, which I go into in the book, and he really wasn't totally into it. And at a certain point, he just, he rolled up his sleeves and he said, I got to finish this movie and I got to fix some things. And he threw out something like, estimates vary, something around 100 visual effect shots that weren't finished but which were in progress. They filmed lots of elements, because there's different elements that go into the shots, and he just threw them out. And not only did he throw them out, but he replaced them with new ones.
Right.
They're mostly Ken Ralston, who's doing the space battle, and he just went out and almost had a heart attack. And they called it Black Friday, and apparently Dwayne Dunham tells a funny story. He was in editorial, and Howard Kazanjian, the producer, came in with these reels and said, "What is this?" And Dwayne just didn't even know what he was talking about. He said, "This is $250,000 down the drain." Dwayne said, "Maybe you can use them on the next movie."
And because Jedi is the first ILM production that was done that Lucasfilm was working on other productions at ILM at the time, weren't there?
Right, and they were burned out when Jedi started. They'd done Poltergeist, E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, Dragon Slayer. So they were quite. Dennis Byrne said, frankly, they was totally burned out and not ready for another Star Wars movie. But at this time, they were the best in the world, and they just really they just did what they had to.
Right. And Jimmy, from a production point of view, do you remember Jedi being a pressurized shoot, or was it a fun shoot?
There was a lot of running around, and I was doing shots. Or they did, the second unit would come up and said, "Jeremy, we need a couple of these shots." They were never in the film, but that's where you were on hand all the time. And in Empire, I played the Imperial officer, Lieutenant Shekel.
Yeah.
And that was when suddenly there was a lot of running around. Quick, go and get changed, go and get changed. I said, "Have I finished for today?" "No, get changed in another outfit, get Lieutenant Shekel, that's the part, there's no one here to do it." That's what happened. I played 3 parts in the end because you happened to be around. But that was nice. I like that sort of pressure part. You change and what am I supposed to do? Shall I stand here? You weren't. You just filmed it and that was it. It was over.
Okay, let's take some questions from the crowd. So we have somebody in the front row and then one over there. Do you have a mic? The mic's coming to you.
Jonathan, just a question about the Lucasfilm archives. There's selected pictures in the books, which I think are fantastic. How many pictures did you have to work from, and are there any particular pictures in the archives that are favourites of yours, which you couldn't use in the book, which you would like to?
You know, what's true is I get all the text in that I need to, but when it comes to the pictures, there's literally thousands of them. A lot of times it's pictures of it's like the same thing, just from slightly different angles. But there's always, it's hard. There's some pictures, great pictures, that I couldn't get into the book. But there's this enhanced ebook that's coming out for all 3 making ofs, October 22nd, and that'll have each one will have 200 or so extra pictures. And I think I got them all in there.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. There's a question over there.
Yes, hello. Sorry, I just seen people stand up with this sort of thing before. Anyway,
Go for it.
question for Jonathan. There's been so much scholarship written about George Lucas's changes to the trilogy over time. Why do you think that he, or when you spoke to him, does he say at all like why he would put Hayden Christensen in for Sebastian Shaw or anything like that? It don't bother me too much, but I know there's a very large contingent of fans who don't like it.
Well, I don't really talk to him about this stuff because each of these making of books only goes up to the original year of their release, so we only talked about Jedi in terms of 1983. But I mean, I know this because I worked on Episode 3, and while they were making the movie, and I think he just wanted to tie it up. He wanted to relate the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy, so it would be seamless. But that's just an hypothesis on my part.
This is right. In the introduction to the book, Brad Bird talks about the reasons why the fans get so alienated about this is that because they care that Star Wars got to them.
Right.
Jeremy, do you get a sense of that Star Wars fans are so passionate about this?
We do. I mean, it's. I think there was a show I did years ago. 500 people, rather like here, actually wanting to hear from the British actor about the thing. And someone said, Mr. Bulloch, I got a question for you. Did you do the voice of Boba Fett? I said, no, I didn't actually. Well, did you do the fall into the Sarlacc pit? I said, no, I didn't. In fact, I'm not even in the film. I don't know what I'm doing here. You're not in the film? I said, no, that was a joke, an English joke. This was probably the first start of doing conventions. I did one, and then this was a bigger one. And they must have thought, this guy's completely mad. He's not even answering the questions.
And after that, you start making jokes to Americans. Don't understand.
Okay, I have another question. Yeah.